Okay, good morning, everybody, from the UK, Cornwall, in the far southwest of England, to be specific. It's 9 a.m. GMT. My name is Jonathan Shields. I'm the head of economics and business at Highgrove Online School. And perhaps more importantly, I'm also the chief examiner for the UK version of the GCSE in business, not the international, but the UK version. I'm also the principal examiner for the UK version of the A-level. And arguably even more importantly, I'm not a retiree. I'm actually teaching the international GCSE in business. And if you're coming along to next week's session, I actually teach the international A-level in business. So you're going to get training today from, hopefully, what you would agree is somebody who knows what they are doing. Now, I'm just looking at the webinar chat, and our fantastic host, Gira, has probably just given us the silver bullet. I will be given numerous comments about, is this recorded? How do I get hold of the PowerPoint slides? That is now in the webinar chat, okay? So certainly the PowerPoint slides are in the webinar chat. And please do make sure that you use these webinar slides with your students. These are not kind of like teacher only. You're not breaking some kind of rule by using these if you want to in the classroom. Well, that's enough about me. I want to find out who are the 43 participants in the room. So in the webinar chat, could you just give me a brief introduction? Who are you? What school do you operate out of? What country do you operate out of? And how much experience have you got in international GCSE business? Let's see what comes through. Okay, so we've got Kent College in Dubai. Fantastic. Range from a lot of experience there, 20 years to 3 years. Oh, it's coming in thick and fast here. Damien's in Brasilia. Wow, this is really a transcontinental training fest. Dubai again. Welcome, Shiromi. Dake in Harrow, Beijing. Ooh, I used to work for Harrow School Online prior to this, Dake. Alba is in Spain, just come back from Tenerife. Wonderful country, Spain. Very sad to hear about the floods there. Oh, Valencia. Yeah, that's particularly poignant there. I hope you're okay there, Alison and Leah in Caxton College. Then we've got Doha, so we're going across to Qatar. Welcome, Alia. Connor again is in Qatar. Oh, we've got a person who I can't pronounce their forename properly. I'm going to give it a go. Caratulane, who is in Pakistan, which is fantastic. I remember doing some training in, where was it now? Oh, the Movenpick Hotel in Karachi. So that was nice. Okay, and Vidya Cheddar, who is in Dubai. Abdul is also in Dubai. Michelle is in Spain. We've got more Spanish connections here. Jerry is in Spain. Jerry McCann, that's a familiar name to me. I'm not sure why, but it is. Natalie from Thailand in RST, which is great. Shamila in Sri Lanka, the wonderful Sri Lanka. Very, very happy memories of being at the Gullface Hotel in Colombo. And we've got Humera, who's also in Karachi. Mohammed from Pakistan as well. We're all good. Oh, good. That's good to hear, Alison, that we're all okay. It looked terrible when I saw that on the television. And then we've got people from Kampala in Uganda. Welcome, Alma. And Paul from Valencia as well. I hope you're okay. Justine from Taunton School International. If that's Taunton School International based in Taunton, you're just up the road from me. A quick 2.5-hour drive up the M5. We've got Alessia from Montenegro, Amna from Dubai, Mo from Myanmar, and Aisha from Dubai. Well, this is all great news. Now, what we've got used to doing there is using the webinar chat to communicate with me. And we can't turn on microphones because it will be hugely time consuming with 47 participants. So your way to communicate with me is through the web chat. Now, if you communicate with me through the web chat, everybody else can see what you have written, which in most cases might be absolutely fine, okay? If you want to ask me something privately, which you do not want anybody else to see, there is a question and answer pod. And if you type a question into the question and answer pod, that is a question that will be only available to me and the person who wrote it, okay? So it may well be that I ask you what you think about certain responses that have been put into the examiner report. In which case, I might say to you, please put your score in the Q&A pod. That way, nobody else can copy it. Okay, let's get started. Now, this training is essentially about looking at the examiner's report and looking at questions that were done badly in June 2024. Now, I've not focused on the R papers, I've focused on the main papers. And I've focused on papers 1 and papers 2. So I've ignored the R papers here because it's only an hour's training. And where I've made my selection is by going to Results Plus and looking at global trends. I was looking at each of the questions globally. There's around about 10,000 students who sit international GCSE business around the world. And I was looking through the scores, the average scores by question type. I found a really, really worrying trend. And it kind of matches in to my Module 2 training, if you partook in that 3 weeks ago, where I said, it's not actually the 9 and 12 mark questions that you should be worried about. They actually performed quite well. What I was worried about was seeing how badly some of the 1, 2, 3, and 6 mark questions performed. And that's what our focus is going to be on today. So let's go to the agenda slide. Okay, we're going to have a brief feedback on paper 1 and paper 2. But I'm guessing what everybody really here is for number 3, which is the detailed analysis of questions. Then we've got the kind of mandatory summary, support, and future events section, and then we might have some Q&A at the end. But as I said, it's only an hour session, so time is reasonably tight. So, what are our aims? Our aims to look back at the 2024 International GCSE Business Performance. What did people do badly? How can we find some really straightforward and quick fixes? And looking at what's in the examiner's report, which is backed up by looking at the Results Plus global data, there really are some incredibly easy quick fixes. Embarrassingly easy, really. And I really do hope you take what is said today on board, because it will improve your students' performance no end. So let's have a look at the papers. The general viewpoint was people finished. Not everybody, but generally. Most people had a reasonably good understanding of the material, but there was evidence of some topic spotting. Certainly when we look at the explain question on human resources, that was really, really badly answered for a 3-mark question. And a 3-mark question is not aimed at a grade 9, grade 8, grade 7, grade 5. It's really aimed at a grade 4 question. So a grade 4 student should be able to get pretty much 2 or 3 marks. That's the aim of that particular question. So not knowing what the human resources function was a bit of a stumbling block, which suggested that perhaps not everything had been taught as thoroughly as other things. The grade boundaries changed slightly at the top end. So as you'll see in a moment, at the top end, there was a little bit of movement up, more so at grades 3 and 4. Because what's happened now as we've moved from 2023 to 2024, all of the COVID allowances have been removed. So where we are right now is, in theory, back to the 2019 standard. Okay, that's the idea. Now, you might turn around and say, well, look, in 2019, the grade boundaries were lower. True, the grade boundaries were lower, but remember, students have got better. And the idea of a GCSE is only to give a certain proportion of students the top grade. So yes, the goalposts do move. That is to be expected. Okay, now remember, for the moment, because there is work going on behind the scenes to make international GCSE modular, but that's not going to happen just yet, any of the questions can come from any part of the specification across papers 1 and 2. Now, it may well be sensible to assume that if there are a lot of questions on marketing in paper 1, there will be less questions on marketing in paper 2. Why would you want to test marketing twice across paper 1 and paper 2? And maybe you're expecting some more material on human resources or something in paper 2. Okay, so that's just worth thinking about as well. And as I said, right at the end, there appear to be gaps, because I found some quite worrying trends, really, in some low-value questions. And they are the easy marks to obtain. They are the low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. Okay, I'm just having a look here at what's coming in the chat. Yeah, don't put your email addresses in the chat. That's what Jira has just mentioned. No questions coming up yet. If you do get questions, please do pop them into the chat. Why? Okay, it's a good one here from Justine. What is meant by making the IGCSE? It's not marketing, it's business modular. What they're going to do is they're trying to create discrete papers. Okay, so there'll be still 2 papers, paper 1 and paper 2, but paper 1 will have discrete content. So this content will be tested in paper 1, and a separate piece of content will be tested in paper 2. So it's not like the current structure whereby you have got all of the content that can be tested in either paper. Jane, why did business have a lower percentage of 9s than other subjects? That would be down to statistical modelling, and I would not be a party to that information. Okay, it'll be statistical modelling. So if you are a chief examiner, as I am, not for this specification, you are essentially told what grade boundaries you have to use. You have very, very limited leeway because it is a statistically driven process. Okay, here are said grade boundaries. There we are. So as you can see, as mentioned, a relatively limited increase in the grade boundaries overall. Remember those scores, 133, that's paper 1 and paper 2 added together. So 133 out of 160, it went up by 1 between 2023 and 2024. Justine has asked when the modular changes are likely to come into effect. I believe, and this is I say I believe because it is a work in progress, I think it's first teaching 2025. I believe it might be first teaching 2026, but I think I've read somewhere first teaching 2025. Okay, so there's the grade boundaries, and you've got the source at the bottom of the page. So if you want to go back and have a look at previous grade boundaries, you can do that. In fact, Pearson are excellent because they create a grade boundary document for every GCSE in every one of those GCSE sessions. Okay, next question, or next slide, I should say. Let's get on with it. So we're going to have a look at paper 1 first because that makes logical sense. And we're going to have a look at question 3A. Now, it's a define question. Now, this should be easy. My students, I give them a definition sheet. I go through the specification and I highlight every single key word in the specification. That's what I do. I then go back and have a look at what has been defined or been asked to be defined before. And when I find defined question answers in mark schemes, I copy them across verbatim. I don't make up my own. Then I fill in the gaps with my own. That's how I do it. And I just say to the students, learn them. And at certain selected times, we might have a definition test, because I wouldn't want students to lose a mark on something that just comes from rote learning. It's rote knowledge. That's all it is. And it's only a 1-mark question. So we don't even have to make a choice between 1 or 2 marks like we have to at international A-level business. No context is required. Why? Because in the mark scheme, right at the top of the mark scheme, it will say AO1, knowledge. And the question was a fairly tricky definition. It's probably unguessable, which is probably the reason as to why it did so badly. And it did really badly, with only the majority got it wrong. So 42% got it right, 58% got it wrong. And I suspect I know why they got it wrong. Now, here we are with a student who's got it right. Now, even then, you could turn around and say it's not a perfect definition. Does economies of scale, where average total cost or per unit cost, they are synonyms of one another, rise when output increases. The students kind of got that output increases element there by saying becoming too big. But my suspicion here is on this particular question, that most of the students probably wrote, this is where costs rise as the business output increases. Not per unit costs, not average total costs, but costs, which implies total costs, which is not correct. It's got to be the unit costs. And that's what I suspect was the problem there. Okay, right. Okay, just checking through the chat, nothing's coming in. It's all about, is this going to be recorded? So that was a bit of an own goal there. That was a bit of an easy miss. But again, if you've created that definition sheet and you've asked your students to rote learn that definition sheet, that shouldn't happen. You know, you don't want to be losing marks on these easy to generate questions. It's a missed opportunity, in my opinion. Okay, let's have a look at 1D. Now, 1D is a state question. Again, 1 mark. Now, these are incredibly badly answered. Incredibly badly answered. And I would spend more time on these than trying to get a student up from 5 to 9 in a 12-mark question. Because with a student of moderate ability, they're going to struggle to get from 5 to 9. You're going to have to put a lot of work in, and they still might not do it. Whereas through practice, the state question should become really straightforward once they get the technique. Now, the critical thing to understand about the state question is that there's a scenario attached to it. In this particular case, Posh Pets Spain, which usefully they have abbreviated to PPS. Now, I'll explain why that is useful in a moment. And on 1D, a whopping 73% of people got a 1-mark question wrong. Only 27% got it right. And it's such an easy question to get right if you understand the technique and you understand the assessment objective that is behind that particular question. Now, the question we're going to look at refers to extending the product life cycle. So if you just write, use an extension strategy, well, you're not going to get any marks anyway for 2 reasons. One, you've just repeated what's in the question. And the second reason is you've not actually brought any application into the answer because this particular question tests application. It doesn't test knowledge. You've got to have some application in there to score the mark. So even though you can be right in generic terms, you will still score 0 because the skill under test is application. Look, there's the question. Now, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor. PPS has been italicized. Why has PPS been italicized? to say that application is under test. This particular question has got a stem, which is even helping the students even more, because there is in the stem mention of pet accessories. I could use that. PPS appears in the question, okay? Italicized. That is telling you that application is under test. So that indication of italicized name of business says I have to use something from the stem or the short extract that accompanies the question. If I don't do that, I will score 0. And 73% of people didn't do that. It's not a hard question. One extension strategy, I could say lower prices. If I said lower prices, I'm right, but I'm wrong. I'll score 0. I could say increase advertising. I'm right, but I'm wrong. I'll score 0. But pet accessories is in the actual question. So that isn't AO2, is it? Wrong, Justine. Pet accessories is in the stem. The question starts from D. State one extension strategy PPS could use to extend the life cycle of pet accessories. Okay, yes, you're right. Didn't see that. Can't use pet accessories. But if I had a different stem that mentioned something else, I could use the stem. So if it said PPS has seen lower sales of pet accessories such as dog baskets, and then the question just said pet accessories, didn't mention dog baskets now becomes in play, okay? And often the stem is put there to remind the student a long, long way away from where the short extract is at the beginning of the question that we're still talking about Posh Pet Spain. It's done there as a guide. It's done there as a help. So Justine, you were right there. Can't use pet accessories. It's in the stem and it's also in the question. Because it's in the question, that means it's nullified as something that I can use. So what have we got? Let's have a look at some answers. PPS could use advertisements to attract more new customers. Gotta be 0. Gotta be 0. It's right, but it's wrong. It's right, you could use advertisement, okay? But there's no application in there at all. And the question is testing AO2. And because the question is testing AO2, that is always going to score a big 0. And that is so quick to fix. If I was taking this into the classroom, I'd be giving my students that question and saying, well, look, that scores 0. Tell me why. Well, if a student doesn't really understand the technique, they'll say, why is it scoring 0? Seems perfectly okay to me. Well, because it's testing application. Amend it. What could you do to change that question or change that answer by adding a few more words? PPS could use advertisement to attract more customers that are interested in pets. Wouldn't work because pet is in the question. PPS could use advertisement to attract more new customers who own dogs. Suddenly, it's a player because dogs is not in the question and dogs contextualizes the answer around Posh Pet Spain. That's a bit of a tongue twister. And that practice process in the classroom irons out these very, very straightforward marks that are being lost. So many marks were lost on these easy questions. It's not about the 9-mark questions or the 12-mark questions. They were done reasonably well. I'm focusing on the ones where, as a percentage of the maximum mark, it was a disaster zone. There we are. There's a good example. They could change the design of the dog coats. There we are. Alter the product, change the design of the dog coats. Suddenly, dog coats means we get 1. So easy to do. Okay? Such a disastrous question style then. The state questions were a nightmare. An absolute nightmare in terms of their scoring capability. Please do have a look at those global results and please do go on Results Plus and have a look at your results and see how you did on those state questions. It's low-hanging fruit. It's easy marks to gain. So much so that we're going to have a look at another one. This is 2A, the second of the state questions. And again, look at the scores there. You know, this time 69% of people got it wrong. This is giving marks away, and really, really easy marks away that can be solved through practice. So again, this is an even easier question, I'd say. State one advantage for PPS of keeping its customers loyal. I could turn around and say increased revenue. I'm wrong, but I'm right. Increased revenue would happen by keeping customers loyal, but I've not got any application in there. So if I just wrote increased revenue, I would get 0. But if I got increased revenue from pet owners, I would now get 1. Now notice the subtle difference now. We have not got pet accessories in the question, and we have not got PPS expanded. And I think that is a cleverness of the examiner who wrote this paper. By not expanding PPS to Posh Pets Spain, told you it was a bit of a tongue twister, that then enables the word that everybody wants to use, pets, that can now be used in an answer to the question. And I've seen this quite a few times in international GCSE, where they have taken the name of the business, put it into abbreviations to then give the student the ability to then use the name of the business or some kind of product that's encapsulated in the name of the business as application in their answer. Worth thinking about. Okay. Right, so I'm just looking at the chat on my third screen, and I can see that it is all about materials from previous sessions. So that PPS, that italicization, again says, well, look, we need some application in here. And again, you look at that and you think that is, oh, they're going to increase their sales as loyal customers will continue to buy their products. If only they could have turned around and said, rather than buy their products, they could have said, buy their dog beds. If their products became dog beds, they'd score the mark. It's that easy. And again, I'll be using this in the classroom. You know, give them a load of state questions. You could write the answers yourself. You could deliberately write generic answers, yeah? And then say to your students, improve them. These are all scoring 0. Make them score 1 by changing 1 or 2 words. That's all you need to do. I find that quite a powerful process to go through. Whereas here we've got customers would engage in repetitive purchase of dog coats and dog leads. There we are. Didn't need the dog leads. Could have stopped at the end of dog coats. Okay, that's worth thinking about as well. You know, how can I trim down an answer to score the mark in the least amount of time, releasing more time for trickier questions that lie ahead? So, unsurprisingly, that scores 1. Okay, let's move on to a trickier question now. Let's move on to 1F. Again, it's another question from my encyclopedia of badly answered questions, all taken from Results Plus. This is the first of the explain questions. Now, bit of a fudge with explain questions. I actually think explain questions test 1 unit of knowledge and 2 units of analysis. 1 unit of knowledge for the reason, the advantage, the benefit, the way, whatever the word is that follows 1. And then 2 strands of analysis for the development of that. But in international GCSE, it's counted as AO1. It's counted as all knowledge. Now, again, look at this. Half marks, yeah, was the average mark. Yeah, half marks was the average mark, with 48% scoring 0. So almost 50% got 0. So what that's telling me is that a whole load of students must have got 3. And then a whole another load of students kind of got wiped out and nothing really in the middle, which I find very, very strange. So a very, very oddly performing question. And I suspect it was because it was a question that students weren't expecting. Perhaps the human resource function had never been mentioned before. Didn't know what it is. What is the human resource function? Don't know what it is. Now, I've put up there the importance of linking phrases. Linking phrases are like a fire break between sentences. So using linking phrases like therefore, as a result, thus, because, it enables the examiner to clearly and easily see that we have moved on from the point and we have now moved into a strand of development. And then we've left that first strand of development and we've moved into the second strand of development. And it significantly cuts down on marker error, and it significantly increases the confidence of the student in knowing that they are going to score all of the marks. I get my students on these 3 markers to use their fingers. When you've done the answer, go back and mark it quickly, read through it quickly in your own mind and use fingers. Have I given the point? Have I used a link strand and developed it? If I have, second finger in the air. Have I used a link strand and developed it further? If I have, third finger in the air. 3 fingers in the air, that should mean 3 marks. And it's a useful kind of mental check just to make sure that you're okay. Now, that's the question. Now notice here, we've gone to the generic word businesses. There's no italicized PPS. That is telling you that there is absolutely no need for application. And you can see that if you look at the mark scheme. At the mark scheme, at the top of the mark scheme for question 1F, it will have AO1 3 marks. Now, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8.5 lines. 8.5 lines for a 3-mark question. You should be able to get that in 3 lines. And I don't like this. One reason why many businesses have a human resource function, that is just repeating the question. Why not just start the answer with to deal with recruitment and selection of workers? Because that's what's going to get the mark, to deal with recruitment and selection of workers. You're getting nothing for repeating the question. And I don't know how long it's going to take to write out the question again, but let's say for argument's sake, it's going to take around about 15 seconds. Those 15 seconds across every single question where you do that add up. And that might be a reason for students crying foul about not being able to finish the exam paper in time. Again, through student training, you can remove that, okay? I might give them that question and say, that question scores 3. I want you to rewrite it so it still scores 3, but in significantly fewer words. And I'll show you how it scores 3 now. There's the point. They have it to deal with the recruitment and selection of new workers. That's the reason. AO1 is in the bag. And then I've got further development of that reason. The bit at the end was further additional development that wasn't required. And I think some students think, well, they've given me 9 lines or whatever it is. I've got to give them 9 lines worth of work. No. You don't have to give 9 lines worth of work. You don't have to fill the space. The space is only there to prevent people asking for additional paper, because that then creates inefficiency in the marking process because it has to be scanned separately. 3 sentences will get you 3 marks. It doesn't have to be that long. And again, that might be something that perhaps you want to work at. So you can see my example over here. Responsible for hiring new employees. Therefore, it can create a recruitment process that finds the most skilled workers. As a result, the productivity of the business should increase. That's my answer to that question. 3 marks, yeah, with linked strands, yeah, with linking words between each of the strands of development and the original reason, which I can also call point. When I say point, I'm referring to generically reason, advantage, way, disadvantage, whatever comes up. Okay, quick look over to chat. Okay, still looking for sort of materials from previous training sessions. Right, okay, let's move on to a different question. Let's move on to a harder question. Now, the analyze questions, they are questions which are levels based. Okay, and let's have a look at the level descriptors first of all. Analyze questions will test two assessment objectives or written skills. AO2, application, AO3, analysis. Now that is how the mark scheme is put together. Notice there are 2 bullet points in each level. The first bullet point has AO2 at the end. That is the application descriptor. The second bullet point has AO3 at the end. That is the analysis descriptor. And the idea is that in each of the levels, there is an analysis and also an application descriptor. Now, notice in level 2, okay? In level 2, in the second bullet point, I'll just move my cursor over here, hopefully you can see it, deconstructs commercial information and/or issues finding interconnected points with chains of reasoning. Interconnected points with chains of reasoning is 2 logical link strands. That is what that is meant by. Whereas if you look at the level 3 descriptor, it's somewhat more challenging. Deconstructs commercial information and/or issues, finding detailed. Notice the addition of the word detailed. Interconnected points with logical chains of reasoning. That means 5 linked strands within the answer. Okay, I think it's prudent for us to get on and have a look at an answer. So let's have a look at a 3D. Where's the application going to come from? Posh Pets Spain. So I'm thinking in my head, I need to get dog leads in, dog baskets in, cat coats in, pets in, assuming pet is not in the question. And again, look at this. It's below half marks as the average, with only 12%. 88% of the students scored less than 5. And it's such a straightforward question that you can score highly on through practice. It really is, okay? And we're going to have a look at one. Now, normally, it's the lack of application that's the problem. Okay, now, Shiromi's asked a really good question. Can students write 2 paragraphs? Yes, they can. Because some parts of the specification make it very, very difficult to generate 5 linked strands. To generate 5 linked strands off a point, before you know where you are a million miles away from what the question actually asked. Now, to offset that, the rule is you can generate 2 points. So if it's analyze 2 benefits, you can offer 2 benefits and develop 3 linked strands off the first benefit, second paragraph, second benefit, 2 linked strands off the second benefit. I would suggest not using bullet points, because if you're answering using bullet points, it's going to feel like a list, and it's not going to have that feel that there are linked strands coming off the benefit, okay? It's going to read like a list. Now, the question you're going to ask me is, what happens if I give 3 benefits or 3 points, depending on what the question's asking? In that situation, the best 2 count. The third one is still marked, and if the third one's the weakest of the 3, it is ignored. But it's still read to ascertain which are the best 2. So there's no point giving 3 benefits, 4 benefits, 5 benefits, 6 benefits. You could give 1 benefit or 2 benefits, but I would say 2 benefits is significantly easier than 1 benefit, because you're going to have to build that quite complicated chain, okay? And that quite complicated chain is quite possible that you might make a mistake. So let's have a look at a question. Look at the size of this. Again, I'd be turning around and saying, ooh, that's long, okay? Now, we've got a stem here. The stem's not really helping me that much, but at least it's not using anything in the question which has got the word pet in it or something like that. So we can come up with 2 points here, okay? 2 points to analyze the importance of reliable market research, okay? That would make sense. I think it's much easier to look at 2 points than to look at 1 point, okay? And the way I'd be marking this is as follows. I'd mark analysis first, and then I would go back and mark application. So I would be doing something like this. There's my point. It could reduce the risk of failure to PPS. There's my first linked strand. And if I was in the classroom, I'd be looking at whether or not I could reduce the length of that linked strand. Is there any way I can streamline that, make it shorter? It feels quite long for one linked strand. Now, I don't like the use of the word furthermore, because the word furthermore it suggests that we're going to go on to a different point, okay? But I have read what's in that furthermore 3 lines. And I've come to the conclusion that the bits that is included with furthermore is not as good as the second paragraph. So again, that's a bit of an error on the student's part. Second paragraph, we've got another point. Then we've got development. Then we've got more development. Then we've got a little bit more development. Now, I just want to point this out here. This could cause high expenses due to wastage. Now, wouldn't it be a lot easier to spot that that was a different linked strand going into linked strand number 3? Yeah, if some kind of linking word was put there. It's quite possible for an examiner to read, this could cause high expenses due to wastage, decreasing profit for PPS. It's quite easy for an examiner to read that as 1 linked strand rather than 2 linked strand. Whereas if you put therefore decreasing the profit for PPS, it really makes it unambiguous that it's a linked strand. Then we've got this bit here down here. Well, that means there's less money available for research and development. Should really be retained profit, but hey, you know, it was given. So what have we got there? 2 points, 1 linked strand in the first paragraph, 4 linked strands in the second paragraph, 5 linked strands in total. Level 3 for analysis. I now go back and consider application. And I'm going to do that using my color purple. I find pet accessories and grooming services and dog beds. Have I got application throughout the answer? Yes. And is each of the bits of application different? Yes. This was awarded level 3 for application. Level 3 for application, level 3 for analysis, level 3, line of best fit. As you can see in the 5th bullet point, this is how I'd be marking it. There's the logic. That's where I get my 6 marks from. Right. Okay. There we go. It might be a little bit later than 10, bearing in mind it's 9:45. Do you have to write a conclusion for the command word analyze? No, you don't, because there is absolutely no evaluation in there at all. The only place where you would be expected to write some kind of conclusion or make some kind of evaluative comment is where A04 appears. Where does A04 appear? It appears in the 9-mark choice questions or justify questions and the 12-mark evaluate question. So, yeah. And you're absolutely right. That's why the STEM was there, Alison, because the question was about customer spending patterns. So that's why they put the STEM in there, to give some kind of steer as to what the importance of that was. Okay, let's move on to another analyze question. This time paper 2, 3D. Yeah, same as before, but now we're looking at a holiday company called TUI. TUI doesn't mention the word holiday in it. I would be turning around and saying, well, look, so long as holiday is not in the question, that's where I want to be focusing on. If I don't want to use the word holiday, I could use the word vacation. What else can I use with holiday? Hotels, beaches, resorts, flights, all-inclusive. Yeah, there's all manner of things that you can use. Sometimes I start lessons off with that. Right, we're going to spend 2 minutes. I'm going to give you a name of a business. I want you to come up with as many words as you can possibly come up with that are associated with that business. Okay. 3D. Again, look at that. That is even worse than the previous one. Yeah. Wow. 9% in the top level with an average score of 2.25 out of 6. And these are so much easier than the 9 and 12 mark questions. So much easier than the 9 and 12 mark questions. This is where, if you've had bad results, on average globally, this is where it's going wrong. And I suspect it comes down to that application issue. Now, this question I thought was quite hard. It's on interest rates. Okay. If it's taught well, shouldn't be difficult, because increase in interest rates, you're thinking, right, customers are going to save more. If they're going to save more, they're going to spend less. Yeah. If interest rates go up and they've got credit cards, they become more expensive. That means they can't spend as much on holidays. If they've got a mortgage, it becomes more expensive. That means they can't spend as much on holiday. That's where I'd be going. Okay. With this one, it's a bit of a mess, and a significant amount of benefit of the doubt was given here on this one, I think. That's the point, because the first bit isn't quite correct. When there is an increase in interest rates, people won't be able to borrow any more loans. Not true. You're not going to get zero amount of people taking out loans. Really, what they should be saying there is that loans become more expensive. Because of this, TUIs will have an opportunity cost as I'll save money rather than spend. So that was kind of taken as a bit of a weak point. So therefore, it's going to lose customers. So we've got a point with one strand of development. What's that going to do for us? That's going to take us to level 1 for AO3. Remember, I'll always mark AO3 first. And then I go back and have a look for some application. And I've got leisure activities and ocean-going cruises. Leisure activities and ocean-going cruises, I've got 2 different bits of application that relate to TUI. They're not the same. They've not repeated holidays twice. They've got 2 different things. Level 2 for application. Now, a lot of you might turn around and say, wow, that's generous. Okay, 3 marks, because I'm just going to scroll back for a second. I could have a really, really top-notch answer that really understands interest rates, which is totally generic, that mentions nothing to do with TUI, and that would also get 3 marks. Okay? The critical thing to understand here is the question is testing 2 skills. And 2 skills, 3 marks each. So the maximum you can get by writing a generic answer is 3. This is a weak answer in terms of analysis, but it has demonstrated the other skill more than once. Okay, we've got some messages come in. I think I've dealt with the conclusion thing. So it doesn't matter if they have written 1 point and developed it further with 1 strand and then moved to a 2nd point with 4 linking strands. No, it doesn't. Doesn't matter at all. But I would say that's actually a more trickier way of doing things, Vidhi, than saying, well, look, my first point, in this case, it will be an effect, is going to be, here's the effect, 3 linked strands. Second paragraph, here's my 2nd effect, 2 linked strands. I would say that that is easier than doing your 4-1 hybrid combination. And then I've got to make sure I go back and I add in, or make sure that there is some application in there. Again, a nice little exercise to use is to say, right, okay, students, I want you to write a generic answer to this. I want you to deliberately put no application in this at all. And thank you for that answer. And we're going to swap some answers around. And now what you're going to do with that swapped answer is you're now going to add the application in that's going to take it and elevate it above 3. The other way of doing that, of course, is you could write the answers and then give them to the students if you wanted to do it that way around. Yep, I like what I'm seeing there from Shiromi. Yeah, that seems perfectly applicable, and any combination thereof. But I would say Shiromi's idea in the webinar chat is the most obvious to me. I would say that's the way I would be doing it if I was answering that question. And let's look at it. On that question, which I don't think's hard, 2.25 out of 6 average. Wow. You know, I'd be upset if my students didn't get 5 minimum on that. Okay, and 5 is double the global average. Worth thinking about. That's why these sessions are useful. And that's why it's important to have a look at the examiner's report. You know, you're starting to gain an insight into the kind of mistakes that other people are making that you want to make sure that your students don't make. Okay, so there's the marking logic. That's how we got to the 3 marks. Line of best fit. Sometimes what we do at UK domestic GCS is we just add the levels up. Level 2 for application, level 1 for analysis, that's where we get our 3 marks from. Sometimes we have a little bit more flexibility than that. You know, if it's a very, very benefit of the doubt, level 2, yeah, maybe we'd end up giving sort of 2 marks. So there's a little bit of flexibility within that. That's why there is no hard and fast rule which says just add up the levels. Okay, 4B, another analyzed question. Okay, the last of the analyzed questions. But again, it was terribly answered. Again, with only 2.25. It must be the same people. Really, really badly answered. Why? Well, let's have a look at it. It's on the Boston matrix. Okay. Now, the Boston matrix is a tricky topic for some students. And what we've got here is a problem. Because I'm drawn to, shouldn't have pressed that then, but it doesn't matter. I'm drawn to, with my cursor, the word holidays. Damn! The word holidays is in the question. And because the word holidays is in the question, that means I can't use it to generate application. And the reason for that is because so many students repeat the question. Okay? So if they just repeated the question straight away, they've demonstrated some application because there's an applied word in the question. So that's why that rule exists. So looking at this answer, we've got a point, a linked strand, another linked strand, and another linked strand. We've got the point with 3 linked strands in the first paragraph. Then we've got a point, then we've got a linked strand, and look at what they've done at the end, and profit loss. If they'd have written therefore profit loss, it makes it prevent loss rather, and therefore prevent loss, that would have given us a second linked strand. So by not using those linking words, you create an element of risk. Is the examiner going to see that as a separate linked strand? Or is the examiner going to just view that as same as the previous linked strand or an addition to the previous linked strand? So this was an expensive approach for this particular candidate because they know about the Boston matrix, yeah, but they don't know about the skill of application. I counted holidays, what, 1, 2, maybe 3 times throughout that, 4 times throughout that answer. And they can't use it because holiday is in the question. So when you look at the overall marking logic, that's where we get level 0, level 3, overall mark, level 2, overall mark, 3. Okay, what have we got coming up here? Now, Connor's asked a really good question. Do you need 3 points of application and a 6-mark response to reach level 3? There is no hard and fast rule. It's really to do with, is it throughout and is it varied? Okay, so I'm sort of thinking back to a question that I did with my IGCSE business students. It was on some kind of music school, yeah? And I had a student that just kept mentioning the word drumming. Drumming, 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 drumming. Just kept repeatedly mentioning the word drumming. And he said, well, look, Mr. Shields, I've given application throughout. I said, yeah, you have, but it's not varied, is it? All you've just done is made sure that every single sentence has got the word drumming in it. So I can't give you level 3 for that. Okay, it's going to have to be level 2. I'm looking for more varied things, you know, music lessons, you know, drumsticks, cymbals, something like that. I don't know, snare drum. I'm not an expert on drumming, but try and make it a little bit more varied. Yeah, the reason why we gave it Alison was because there was three. They did have it throughout. They had it in both paragraphs, but each of the things were separate. And I suspect it was such a poorly answered question that that's why it was given top level for application. Now, I'm sure that your students can do better than that. I'm sure that your students can give more application throughout their answer. But that's the benchmark. As I say, I'm not the principal examiner of international GCSE business. Okay, let's have a look at another question now. We're getting towards the end. We're going to run over a few minutes, but that's okay. 1F, an explain question. Again, look at this. The average mark was 0.98 out of 3. 62% scored 0. And that's a question that is designed for a level 4 and level 5 candidate. A level 4 and level 5 candidate should be getting 3 marks on that question. That's how it's designed. Okay, let's have a look at the question. It's about hygiene factors in Hertzberg's motivational theory. Well, okay, you can have hygiene factors, you can have motivational factors. Okay, most people will pick hygiene factors because it comes first. Now, as we know, a hygiene factor does not create positive motivation. It just prevents demotivation from occurring. So that's the angle of attack I would have gone for. Let's have a look at what the student's done. Again, notice for the explain question, there is absolutely no application in there at all. No mention of TUI at all. Okay, so on this particular question, we've got hygiene factors. These are things such as livable wage, safe and secure workplace, and cleanliness around the workplace. Could streamline that down straight away. Okay, they're getting the first mark just by saying hygiene factors. Then we've got these factors. Without these factors, motivation cannot happen. That is valid. Then we've got, as these are basic needs, further development. Far, far better to use a linking word, because as these are basic needs, to some examiners, that would just be a follow-on from what went before. And the examiner's having to do a little bit of work to separate that out, to say, yes, that is bringing some additional development to the table. Okay, just checking the chat box to see if there's anything else that's coming in. Okay, so that's looking back at the examiner's report and the ones that students found difficult in the examiner's report. And I'm just going to summarize it. All of the questions that we looked at there, I thought were low-hanging fruit. I didn't think there was anything really there that was that difficult if the technique is instilled into the students. Okay, and it's practice, 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 practice. Now, what have we got for the support? There's the home page on the Edexcel website. Now, when you download the PowerPoint, I put in links, so you can see. Look, you know, my cursor's gone from an arrow to a hand. So if you want a link to the home page, there's a link to the home page. I'll try to help you out there, and that's where I'll be going. Exam materials, having a look at all of the different examination papers that have been used across each of the sessions. And again, I've got a link there. My arrow goes into a hand. If you cannot access the exam papers, you need to speak to your examinations officer. And once your examinations officer has clicked an icon on Edexcel Online, you will be able to get around the padlock and you will have your own password. Now, accessing the Pearson portal. When you access the Pearson portal, you will see this, and you can select various apps. And the two apps that I would say are probably most relevant are Exam Wizard and Results Plus. Again, I've given you the link to the Pearson portal. If you need a password for the Pearson portal, again, your exams officer is the person who will give you that access. So speak to the examinations officer. Exam Wizard. Again, I made this really easy for people here. create your own exam papers, topic-specific exam papers, paper-specific exam papers, question-specific exam papers. So if I wanted to create a whole load of explain questions on human resources and only focus on human resources questions that appeared in paper 1, I could do that. Now, a lot of people have asked, how do I use Exam Wizard? I've given you the link to the official Edexcel YouTube video. So there is a YouTube video that will talk you through how to use it. So please do have a look at that. And the same goes really for Results Plus. There is an excellent YouTube video, okay, that explains how to use Results Plus. And it also moves into the mock analysis service as well. So if you want to use a past exam paper and input the marks for each question, you can then do a Results Plus analysis comparing the scores that your students got in the mock to the actual scores when that exam paper was actually a live paper. Again, I don't need to spend much time explaining that because I've given you these links. So when you download the PowerPoint, you can read or watch that YouTube video at your leisure. Okay, there we are. It's 10:03. I've got some more questions here. Yep, you should have access to the materials of this like we had for the A-level session. Our host, if you scroll back through the chat, has already said where that is. Okay, so you should be able to download this PowerPoint. Okay. Should we use the GCSE papers as mock exams for the IGCSE students? Do they transfer well? The answer to that is yes and no. The GCSE papers have got a different structure, okay? The questions are essentially the same. So the 12-mark questions are the same. The 9-mark questions are the same. The 6-mark analyse questions are the same. The 3-mark explain questions are marked the same. The 2-mark calculate questions are slightly different because, of course, with the domestic GCSE, you do not get the formulae at the beginning of the paper. The state questions are the same, okay? The define questions are the same. There are multiple choice questions, but the multiple choice questions are interspersed throughout questions 1, 2, and 3, as opposed to having all of the multiple choice questions all together at the beginning of the exam paper. There is also, in the UK domestic GCSE, an additional command word which is not used for IGCSE, which is the 6-mark discuss question. So a lot could be used, but it just requires a little bit of care, okay? I hope that answers your question, Rebecca. So you can't just turn around and say, all right, okay, let's get a GCSE UK paper and let's give it to a load of students in Dubai who are sitting IGCSE. I think I'd want to just look at it first and maybe remove some of the questions or move things around a bit, maybe. Okay. And Gira's come back in with where you can access the resources from. Okay, good stuff. For me, the more option is when I go to the top of the screen, okay, at the top of the screen, something comes down for me, and then I scroll along and I see 3 dots and I see more. That's how I'm finding it, Nastasia. Apologies, I was going to call you Natasha. Okay. Yeah, well, that wasn't really the evaluate question. It really wasn't on the agenda here, Shiromi. The evaluate question, A, wouldn't fit on slides anyway, and the evaluate question was actually done reasonably well. It was the evaluate question's not really the problem, from what I can see. The problem is actually most of these 6, 3, and 1-mark questions. So many marks, easy to gain marks, just lost there. So actually, the evaluate question was done quite well. I think if you, Abdul's asked a question, will there be any further CPD opportunities like today in the near future? Ask your Edexcel representative. Your Edexcel representative, say to them, we would like some more training opportunities. I personally prefer face-to-face, but that's just me. But, you know, online works well now with the improvements in the internet, and certainly this new Zoom webinar that we've got going on today has been, I can just see this getting better and better and better every single year. So it's good. Yes, Alison, thank you very much. And I'll see you next week for the IAL feedback. Again, we're going to be focusing on just the questions that people did badly. Now, I might have to create a delegate pack for that one because obviously the questions are far longer. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Okay, it's 10:07, overrun a little bit. And I'll see many of you, I think, next Thursday. Same time, not quite the same place, but you know what I mean. It will be on the Zoom, but it will be through a different link for International A-Level Business Examiners Report feedback. Okay. Okay, thank you, Nastasia. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, Jira, I think we are there with this now. Oh, I've got to end on the Pearson logo. My apologies. There we are. Got to follow the regulatory requirement.